Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jenny Masterson, and I work for Developmental Disability Services Division of the state of Vermont. I'm here this morning just to introduce the speakers and to launch the session. A quick reminder is to please mute your microphone while the session is being presented, and then there will be a time at the end for question and answer. As you think of things you want to make sure are discussed, please put them in the chat area. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Brian Daigle of the University of Vermont. Brian, you can take it from here.
Thanks, Jenny. Yes, I'm Brian Daigle. Jesse Suter was supposed to be with us. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us today, but I'll cover his spot, and happy to be joined by Jesslyn Guston and Michelle Pea as we go through our session here, supporting our youth with disabilities and work-based learning opportunities. So just to start, I'm with the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion at the University of Vermont, and Jesse Suter is our director of that. And really, the mission of the center is full inclusion of people with disabilities. And our vision, a future where all people, including people who experience developmental and other disabilities and their families, are fully included in their homes, schools, and communities, leading to self-determination, independence, productivity, participation in all parts of community life. And our mission is to act as a bridge between our community and university to provide culturally competent and collaborative education, support, research, and information sharing to ensure people with disabilities and their families can live their lives as they choose. So we have a number of different grants and contracts and programs through the center, all focusing on inclusion of people with disabilities into their community. And in terms of employment, that's really been my area of expertise for a number of years at UVM. And when we talk about employment, we want to think about employment for everybody, not just some. And I think often there can be a misconception that folks with really significant disabilities are not employable and will not be able to work, which is not true. That is not the vision that we have, that we can find work for everybody, and that we want to presume competence, that everybody has gifts and skills to offer and can participate as develop as part of society. And I like this quote from John McKnight, who wrote the Careless Society. He's done a lot of work and in this kind of area of community inclusion, not so much disabilities, but he observed that people with developmental disabilities have been found to thrive and flourish when they escape a forest of professional services and are provided community opportunities to express their unique gifts. So that's our vision, that's our philosophy, that everybody can work, everybody can be included, and our job is to discover their gifts, skills, and dreams. So how do we do that? The terminologies used mostly these days is the discovery process. We're getting away from kind of some traditional assessments and really looking at just discovering who this individual is. And some of the questions we want to ask you is basically, who is this person? And as far as they're sort of, what do I have to offer to an employer? What is important to me in a job? What motivates me to work? What supports will I need to be successful? And this Griffin Hammis Associates has done a lot with the discovery process. And one of the things they talk about, which I firmly believe in, is like looking at what are the ideal conditions of employment for this person. Because a lot of times we get into kind of the habit of asking people kind of, what's your dream job? When we really want to look at sort of the conditions of employment, what type of environment would you thrive in? What type of environment should you avoid? So we want to be a little more kind of open and expansive in our thinking about that, and not so much just like a specific single dream job, but more of a career or environment where we feel this person is going to succeed. And this process of discovery should be done thoroughly but succinct. That you should set deadlines. Sometimes people get in the habit of discovery just kind of goes on forever and ever. There are a lot of different methods and processes we can use for discovery, but we want to have an end date and a goal that, we want to gather enough information, really get to know who this person is, what we think would be a great job environment for them, and then really develop a transition or employment plan for them. So in terms of the methods, discovery methods, there are a number of different ways that we can do the discovery process and get to know people better. One is just basically, community-based functional assessment, or Griffin Hammes calls it Howie, of hanging out with intent. That is just spending time in the community, with the individual, doing things that they like to do, an environment that they choose. So you can really get to sort of know them in an environment where they're comfortable, not necessarily in your office. Job tryouts are a great way of getting to know somebody. Cautious records review. A lot of people have extensive charts and records. There can be some good information in there, but you want to be cautious because there could be some things there, that may not be particularly helpful. Interviews, with the individual, with their family, with friends, just like, who knows us better than our friends or our family? They might have different perceptions of us, and that can be very helpful. There are a number of career assessments that are more standard and traditional. One of the other sessions, Bill Sugarman is talking a lot about that. Voc Rehab, developed a list of kind of preferred career assessments, and that you can find that on the other session. Other methods of discovery are just observations, just watching people work, or watching them in their home. Sometimes visiting in their home is really the best place to see them, and see them in their environment and see how they interact. Look at previous work or school experiences. Informational interviews with businesses. There are a number of interest inventories that are offered online based on John Holland's vocational theory that can be really helpful in kind of targeting a job field. And then sort of our preferred, and I think the most effective, is person-centered planning. And that's, in Vermont, we use the MAPS session a lot, but there are a number of different methods for person-centered planning. And what person-centered planning, Beth Mount, Canada, was one of the founders of it. And she said, person-centered planning can help those involved with a focused person to see the total person, recognize his or her desires and interests, and discover completely new ways of thinking about the future for that person. So the purpose is to look at the individual in a different way, assist the person in gaining control over their life, increase opportunities for participation in the community, recognize individuals' desires, interests, and dreams, and through team effort, develop a plan to turn dreams into reality. So the whole concept of person-centered planning or student-centered planning is that that student is at the center. So they always get to voice their opinions first. And then you have family members that can go in second, and then staff or other significant people are invited. So it is a team effort, but the person is always the focus of that, and it also focuses on their gifts and skills and their hopes and dreams. It's not a traditional plan of, it doesn't focus on their disability or their deficits. It focuses on what they're good at, what they can do, what their hopes and dreams are. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jessalyn Gustin, who is going to give us an example of some person-centered planning.
Thank you, Brian. So yeah, I think Brian really summarized well the intent and purpose of working with all individuals around looking at a person's strength. And I think one of the difficult things for us as service providers is really, we come from a service, a menu of services, and we kind of tend to try to put people into those service categories. And in my experience, some of the most transformational work that has happened with individuals has happened when we kind of put the services to the side and we let teams really look at the individual and what their strengths are. Person-centered planning is one way to approach that. The importance of creating really a roadmap, like Brian talked about, having a process that is consistently moving, and we're not getting stuck in kind of our traditional service patterns for people. And click to the next slide. So an example of this that I actually have been able to work with a youth who at the time when I came to the table, to the team, he was exhibiting some risky behaviors at school. The school and his service provider at the time was looking at a residential school placement. Working with the team to really kind of step back as opposed to, you know, this person isn't functioning well in this environment, looking at, as Brian talked about, what environment would this person thrive in? So we did a very extensive kind of dreaming experience for them where we talked about what are the things you really love and what are the environments that you really enjoy being in. And we're able to move that person from traditional school to community-based learning and community-based work. And that person now is living in their own apartment, working a full-time job, and is not receiving any Social Security. So I think that is an example of really somebody who the environment wasn't right, but when you find the right environment, that person can really thrive. Next slide. So Tiffany is another individual that I get the privilege of working with. Her mother tells the story of when she was born. Many of the medical professionals were saying that she would need to be institutionalized. Luckily, she had a great support network around her and experienced a number of different avenues to see really what Tiffany enjoyed. And she really loves art and creating. And so the team worked with her to develop a greeting card business, taking her love of art and helping to connect her to the community, provide some income for her, and most importantly, gets Tiffany into the community. She's interacting with business owners and really is seen as a contributing member of our community.
Great. Thanks, Jesselyn.
Thanks.
Now we'll turn over to Michelle Pea, and she's going to talk about some workplace supports. I think you're muted, Michelle.
I always struggle with that. So anyway, my name is Michelle Pea, and I'm the director of our Way to Work program. And I'm just bringing you guys through some thoughts as what we do when we get into the job development process after the assessments have done, and some kind of key strategies that we work with. So we always look at this as this is the time where the rubber hits the road. How are we going to help this person go out there and build those social networks, build the social capital, build the skills, and collaborate with organizations. So one thing that, you know, what Brian and Jesselyn had talked about is that assessment process, really understanding the person. And this is a really essential part to start early in the process. Job development in this whole assessment process takes time. So you really want to build the person up at a very young age of the importance of employment and why employment should be important, and the roadmap on how to get there from an early age. And then once you get through that assessment part, it's really building the engagement with the individual, taking the information that you learned and going out in the community and exploring with it. We all have dreams of what we want in life, but experiences is what really enhances those dreams to really find what we're looking for. So it's important to explore those items. If a person is interested in working with pets, go to pet stores, go to grooming places, go to all those different areas that can help really develop if this is an area the person really wants to explore more. I also want to emphasize the importance of relationships. I truly believe that everything we do in life is based on a relationship, and that is a relationship with the job seeker and a relationship with the employer. So really paying attention to what they're looking for, their avocation, what their wants are. And the same thing with the employer is approaching the employer with really being genuine, showing interest in what they do and what they develop and what their business is about. and really be honest and forthcoming on what you're looking for. We as job developers are not here to sell people. We're here to sell people's talents and gifts and contributions that they can give to the business society and the community. So it's really important that we're really transparent with the needs and wants and the skills of the individuals and how they can fit into a culture, fit into an employer, and how they can help develop the same wants and dreams that the employer is trying to build within their organization. So it's really important that those relationships are strong. And it's also important to always follow up with those relationships. It's not a place and fade and go away. It's a place, fade, and constantly build those supports. Individuals' maps are a development map. And as people develop in skills, their wants become greater, bigger, and more. And we need to make sure that these plans are development plans that continue to build that development, continue to build those skills, and bring even more greatness to the jobs that they're holding. Brian, you want to do next slide? So one big thing too is this assessment is a tool, and we always want to think about that additional potential within that tool. If a person wants to be an astronaut, what is the different potential around being an astronaut that is going to build that same desires and fulfillment in the job, but not necessarily going to the moon, right? So we really need to think about what that additional potential is within that student as we start exploring opportunities. We have to be very aware of an environment. Just because you think you want something doesn't mean that it's really what you want. You really have to understand a person's body language when they're in an environment. For example, if you're going into a pet store and the lighting is too bright and the person it just kind of like goes into themselves. Those are things that you have to be aware of and be ready to change and modify and find ways around it. So environment and body language is really important when you're looking for the right match for somebody. And commonality, being able to identify commonality. That is really the biggest piece of fitting into a job, is having that commonality with others. So you build that rapport, you build that social capital. So when you go into an organization and it is, say it's pet grooming, and you see a colleague or a coworker of the individual that's wearing a Red Sox shirt, you may want to bring that up to the individual because that's a commonality that they can connect. And when connection happens, then natural supports come into place and people are more apt to really unite and do something as a team. So again, relationships is a huge, huge component of everything we do in being successful at the job site. Next. Two key pieces that I feel is very important in any job, job carving, job development, is support for the individual and supporting the employer to provide. So really understanding what your role is when you go into a job establishment to either find a job or support a job is really to understand that role. How do you support the individual to really be part of the culture? How do you support the individual to rely on their coworkers for guidance? And how to support that employer to provide and be responsible for this individual just like any other employee. We see a lot of times where the employer will go to the job coach or the employer will go to the employment specialist and ask them, can you do this or can you do that? And it's really important to understand what your role is within that job development or within that employment support on making sure the individual is actually steering the ship at all times and the employer is doing what their part is to make sure that employees is successful. Next. So I wanted to give you a little example of how we took an assessment and we built it into a job that has been very successful. So we worked with this young lady and her dreams were she wanted to live independently. That was one of her biggest dreams. She wanted her own apartment. She wanted her own job. She wanted to make money. She wanted to really fit into her community, have friends and whatnot. So her goal for her was to get her own apartment. She also really enjoyed baking, and she really felt that her future had something to do within baking. She wasn't sure what it was, but she knew that that's an area that she wanted to do. And she wanted to build money, or she wanted to make money, and also have the flexibility to work when she was able to. She had some areas that she had to work through, and the flexibility was really important to her. She really wanted friends. So her social needs was she wanted to feel like she had a place to participate, that she was connected, that she was doing something great for her community. And her therapeutic needs, again, was around flexibility, and she really needed something to keep herself calm. She had some anxiety that would build, and she was really in a place that she really needed something that would bring her a feeling of safety, that would bring her a feeling of commitment and collaboration, and just to have that feeling of connecting and just being a part of something. So with this, we built a self-employment called Nickering Nuggets. And also too, I meant to say one of her dreams was she wanted to be a horse trainer. So within her baking, wanting to be a horse trainer, we knew that was an area that we wanted to go. So independent living was a big thing. So what we learned from the assessments and going out and exploring with her is an area that we could really work on was a horse treat business. So the horse treat business met her dreams. She wanted to work with horses. This was a way that she could actually interact with horses. She wanted to live independently, so she needed a lot of those independent skills around cooking, around executive functioning, around shopping, around money management that this business could actually really support. She also wanted friends, and when we talk about social network and we talk about commonality, so commonality for her was definitely horse barns, because she loved horses. Other people love horses. During the time that she was planning on spending within her employment was around the time that young ladies or other people were at the horse barns working with their horses. So when she went into the barn, it was an instant connection because they loved horses, she loved horses. So it was that commonality to talk about their horse. And that really helped her with her social process because it gave her something to talk about. It gave her something that she knew really well. So that commonality was very natural for her and genuine. And then the therapeutic needs. We all know horses are used all the time for therapeutic needs. They bring a calming aspect. It's really enjoyable to be around them. So with this business, we really hit on all areas of her wants and her skills and her talents and her social aspirations. And it really worked out well because she was able to build this business, learn about money management, you know, do her budgeting, learn how to bake and use the oven and read recipes to help with her independent living so she can make herself meals at night. It helped with her social needs because she became friends with these horse owners and really built some natural supports around that where they were really eager for her to come in every week to sell her treats. So she was providing a service, she was providing a product, and she was providing an opportunity for social networking. And then her therapeutic needs. She walked into a barn and she loved it. It was something that really brought her some calmness. So that's just like a quick example, and there's a lot more that goes into it on how these assessments and the job development really link together and need to fuse together to make a successful placement. And I'm not sure what the next slide is. Or yeah, so Brian, we'll leave this back to you.
Okay, back to me. Thanks, Michelle. So I think thanks and Jesselyn for these examples, because really the question is not like if a person is employable, but how to employ this person. You know, again, the presumption of competence, that how can we get that this person can work, just how can we help them to get the job that will be best for them. And Jesselyn and Michelle shared some great examples. So here are just a few resources, and I think the slides will be shared of just where you can get some more information on the things that we talked about in this session today, you know, with the discovery process and mapping and customized employment and things like that. So I guess at this point, we'll just open it up to any questions, Jenny?
Yes, what we'd like to do is if you could put your questions into the chat box, then I will read them aloud to the presenters and they can respond. Okay, so the first question from Marcus is, how many hours per week do these individuals in your examples work?
So for Nickering Nuggets, she works between 10 to 15 hours a week, and it's really dependent on where she's at physically and emotionally throughout the week. And that's what was nice about her self-employment, is it allows her that flexibility. But generally, she works between 10 to 15 hours a week.
Tiffany is around the same, and obviously her self-employment, you know, allows her to have the same flexibility kind of when she's ready, willing, and able to work. In the first example I gave, he's actually working full-time now.
And that's one thing I want to talk about with self-employment is what's great about self-employment is it's really based on where the person is at the moment, and it's so expandable. You know, there's opportunity for unlimited income, unlimited growth, unlimited time, as we all know.
Other comments, other questions? Okay, we have another one from Emily. I don't have any questions, but I want to share how much I appreciate your emphasis on person-centered planning and that you provided how we can take immediate action to implement these strategies. Thank you.
I also think the key with job development is doing it early. You know, these assessments have to be done early. You know, I really encourage folks not to wait until the last year, to the super senior, or whatever that looks like, is really start once an individual is employment age. The talk should really be there, if not earlier, on the value of employment, because we all know that our social networks come from employment. That's where, once we leave school, our whole social being is differently, and it's really progressed from work.
And I think when we think about, you know, just throughout the course of our own lives, that just at a very young age, people start saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think that sometimes we forget to have those same conversations with kids with significant disabilities. And also for parents, I think, you know, for parents to be thinking about that and creating those opportunities for their children and thinking forward so that they can participate in a very strength-based process.
Yeah, and to add on to that, you think about work as it's an identifier. When you meet somebody for the very first time, it's usually, hi, are you married, do you have children, and where do you work? Those are three general questions that really identify a person when they're out into that social networking phase.
Next question from Jennifer is, do you have any templates to use with teams that teams can use? I'm assuming this means templates for the discovery process, perhaps?
We do, yeah. I have some templates for the MAPS process and some others that I can share. I don't think they were on the links that I provided, but I can add those to that.
Peter says, I had read a year ago that the employment rate for high school students with disabilities is very low. Any idea where that is compared to other high school students? Brian, do you have that information?
I don't have that information. I have the data, yeah, like our national data, you know, our employment rate for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities is about, you know, 48, 49%, but I don't think that's specific for high school. I'm not sure.
No, that includes everybody.
Yeah. I'm not sure we have that data, but I can look it up and see if I can find that.
Other questions? Comments? Shelley says, that would be great, Brian. Would appreciate the templates so we can use the MAPS process with our students and families.
Also think about how to build that team too. You know, Voc Rehab is an amazing resources. Your adult service agencies are amazing resources, VFN. You know, there's a lot of people that you can bring to the table to help with this process and help navigate.
I have a question, if I may. Could you just go into a little bit more detail describing the process that you would take to convene a team to actually have a map session or a discovery session to get to know the individual? Can you just walk us through the steps that you would take, and who are the essential people?
Do you want to take that, Jessalyn?
Sure. So, you know, I think the most important thing is about having people around the table that really see a person's strengths. You know, if we're truly talking about it being person-centered, having the person at the center and that they're getting to involve the people that they want to involve in those planning processes. I really always like to encourage people to bring a friend. You know, who is going to be your ally, who is going to be the person that you're going to bounce things off of. And, you know, if you have a bad day at work, who are you going to talk to? I think, you know, sometimes we have so many clinical people around the table that the conversation becomes very clinical, and making sure that you have diverse representation of the person is important.
Do you have other questions?
I just had a comment. I just wanted to pick up on something Jessalyn said earlier, but just like starting early and sort of planting that seed of employment, of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I see that as one of the sort of deficits that we have. So I think schools can help a lot with that, of just sort of planting that seed of employment, or post-secondary ed, like our Think College and College Steps programs. Because I think a lot of families might get in the mindset that that they're not able to do a certain number of things. And it reminded me of, I was at a conference a few years ago, and I did a session on our Think College program, and it was a round table, and one of the participants there was a mom, who had a 5-year-old with Down syndrome. And she had heard about these post-secondary ed programs, and she came to this, and she said, like, well, I wanted to find out more about how, how my son could get involved in one of these programs when he's the right age, and how do I, save for funding and things like that. So I just thought it was really great that she had that foresight to kind of really look ahead, and look at a different future for her son, rather than like going into sheltered workshop, which a lot of, agencies, certainly not in Vermont, but around the country, sort of that's the goal. They think, okay, you get out of high school and you're going to go into some segregated setting. So she had this, these different hopes and dreams, and they are possible, and I think the more we can kind of instill that with families and teachers, to kind of raise the bar, the better. And I think it helps in the long run too, of just developing, a good work ethic among students with disabilities.
I have another question, if I may, in the interest of, we have a few minutes left, and I don't see any other questions in the chat area, but others, please give me your questions. When a person that you're working with, for example, the person that you spoke about, Michelle, who loved the idea of being an astronaut, how do you take that kind of aspiration or dream and help that person to shape it to something that they will love, based on that original thought, that original dream? Jessalyn, Brian, Michelle, whoever wants to answer that.
Yeah, I think for us, what we really need to, for what we do, is we really go out and start exploring that, and just really coming together as a team and looking at that additional potential and coming up with ideas that can give you the same feeling or the same fulfillment, but may not be exactly that. I think what happens a lot of times with students is they don't have a lot of community experience and knowing what the Vermont business world has to offer, and to opening that up you know, we all have dream jobs and we've all veered into maybe a different direction, maybe the same direction, but really, you know, what we did was we were able to explore, and helping these students to be able to go out and explore and understand that there's bigger and more things out there than we really know. And that changes our trajectory, right? You know, you may go into a baking area and just realize, wow, I really love to bake, and that's my new path. So it's really getting out there and exploring, and just knowing that there's more out there to offer than just what I've learned through the people that are around me. I have this one gentleman, he is pretty insistent that he is going to be an investment banker at the top bank in Boston. You know, that's a great goal, but what can we do with him around that to start building those skills and understand if that's really what he wants to do? He wants to do that because he sees the fame of his father and what it brings for his father, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to feel the same way about that when he does that. So it's how do we find jobs that can help him identify if that's where he wants to be, while also exploring other opportunities out there that may bring him the same fulfillment. So I know that's a lot of words that I just said, but it's that exploration. It's about getting out there and experiencing things and having folks really being part of a community. Their social networks can help with that path. So I just can't emphasize enough about just getting out there and building the relationships and building that experience. I don't know if that was helpful or if it was just a lot of words.
No, that was really good. The only thing I would add to that is I think to recognize again of what our experience is, and dreams are really what motivates us. So it's important for us to keep that in perspective when a person's dream, going back to Brian's initial slide about presuming competence, and you know, really recognizing that people are on a journey and we're on that journey with them, and if they're motivated by what that goal is, that's going to continue to help people make progress and learn and become productive.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and there is one more from Marianne. Any suggestions for career assessments appropriate for individuals with developmental disabilities? Career Stop, One to Career Stop, etc., are great for those able to engage, however, difficult for certain individuals unable to process their answers.
Yes, I do know of some. Yeah, that list that Voc Rehab has, it's kind of a generic list, like for anybody with disabilities, but specifically for developmental disabilities, there are some. One of them I'll include with the resource list it's really kind of a low-tech thing. I'm not sure they still make them anymore, but it's like a card game that I have that they can use for kind of career assessment, kind of rating what you like and what you don't like. And I know there's the picture one, the PECs. I'll look that up too. But I'll do a little research on some that are more specifically targeted for developmental disabilities.
Another question from April is, how had you adjusted some of your exploration during the time of COVID?
A big thinking outside the box. You know, I think what we've been challenged with is employers are short-staffed and they still have a business to run, and time is essential. So having the virtual meetings has been difficult, and of course, there's limited social interaction is actually going to the site. We have created some virtual meetings. We have one that's called Let's Talk About Work, and it's helping people stay engaged in what work means, and also learning ethics behind work as far as like appropriate dress, appropriate language, how do you build natural supports, and all those types of things to help people engaged. But exploration of employment is more difficult right now, and it's about being creative and working with the employer on what they're able to do to help build, you know, to bring this person in if it's appropriate to bring in at this time. So it's really just being creative and thinking outside the box, and you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, it's close to 10:30, so people will want to sign out from this session and get ready to sign into workshop round 3, which starts at 10:40. But thank you everybody for coming. And again, Brian Daig is with the University of Vermont. Michelle Pea is with Champlain Community Services, and Jessalyn Beston is with Upper Valley Services. So thank you all for joining, and thank you presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.